Dr. Alex Rivers slumped back in his office chair and stared at the assignment paper on his desk. After working for 15 long years as one of Earth's best language experts for alien visitors, this felt like a huge step backward. His colleagues were already whispering and laughing behind his back. They called his new job babysitting duty, and honestly, Alex was starting to think they might be right. The file in front of him told a pretty sad story. His new assignment was a young alien girl named Zara who had come to Earth 6 months ago. She was part of a group of refugees who had escaped from their home planet during a terrible war. While all the other aliens in her group were doing amazing things, learning English, getting jobs, making friends, Zara seemed completely lost. 3 different researchers had already tried to work with her. 3 experts, each one more qualified than the last, had all given up and written the same thing in their reports. Subject shows no progress in language learning or social adaptation. The words stung as Alex read them. These weren't just any researchers either. They were some of the smartest people he knew, and they all agreed on one thing: Zara was hopeless. Alex picked up her photo from the file. She had this strange, shimmery skin that changed colors slightly in different light, kind of like looking at soap bubbles. Her eyes were bigger than human eyes. But what really caught his attention was her smile. In every single photo, she had the exact same smile. Not a happy smile or a sad smile, just this constant, unchanging expression that never seemed to go away. The previous researchers had written some pretty harsh things about that smile. Dr. Johnson called it unsettling and inappropriate. Dr. Peterson described it as a sign of possible brain damage. Dr. Williams, the last one to work with her, simply wrote patient appears unable to respond normally to social situations. But something about that smile bothered Alex, not in a bad way, but in a curious way. He had been studying alien behavior for most of his adult life, and he had learned one important thing: nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Every alien species he had worked with had their own ways of showing emotions, their own customs, their own reasons for doing things that might seem strange to humans. Alex closed the file and decided to go see Zara for himself. He walked down the long, white hallway of the research center, past rooms where other aliens were having lessons with their teachers. Through the windows, he could see them laughing, struggling with pronunciation, getting excited when they learned new words. It looked like a normal school, except the students had blue skin, or extra arms, or could change their shape. Room 847 was different. When Alex looked through the small window in the door, he saw Zara sitting alone at a small table. She wasn't doing anything. No books, no computer, no games, just sitting there with that same smile, staring at the white wall in front of her. For a moment, Alex felt sorry for her. She looked so small and lonely. He knocked gently and walked in. "Hi, Zara. My name is Alex. I'm going to be working with you from now on." Zara turned to look at him, and Alex felt something unexpected happen. When their eyes met, he got the strangest feeling that she was really seeing him, not just looking at him, but actually studying him, trying to figure out who he was and what he wanted. It only lasted for a second, and then that constant smile was back. But Alex was sure he hadn't imagined it. "How are you today?" Alex asked. Sitting down across from her, Zara didn't answer. She never answered, according to her file. But Alex noticed something the other researchers had missed. When he spoke, Zara's head tilted slightly to the right, just a tiny bit. It was so small that most people wouldn't notice. But Alex had spent years watching for tiny details like that. Alex tried a few more questions. "Do you like this room? Are you comfortable? Do you miss your home planet?" Each time he watched carefully, Zara never spoke, never nodded, never shook her head. But her eyes seemed to be listening to every word. After about an hour, Alex decided to try something different. Instead of asking questions, he started talking about himself. He told Zara about his job, about how he had always been fascinated by different languages, about his cat named Whiskers who liked to sit on his computer keyboard while he worked. As he talked, Alex noticed something amazing. Zara's breathing changed. When he talked about happy things, she breathed slower and deeper. When he mentioned something sad, like how his cat had been sick last week, her breathing became quick and shallow. She was reacting to his emotions, even though she wasn't saying anything. The biggest surprise came at the end of their first session. Alex was packing up his notes when he accidentally knocked over his coffee cup as the brown liquid spread across the table. He muttered to himself, "Great, just great. Can't even get through one meeting without making a mess." That's when it happened. Zara reached over and grabbed some tissues from the box on her side of the table. She started cleaning up the spilled coffee without being asked, moving quickly and efficiently like she had done this many times before. But more importantly, Alex was sure he saw her smile change for just a moment. It became smaller, more genuine, almost like she was trying not to laugh. "Thank you," Alex said, genuinely surprised by her help. Zara looked up at him, and for just a second, Alex could swear he saw her nod slightly before that constant smile returned. Walking back to his office that evening, Alex couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. Everyone said Zara was hopeless, that she couldn't understand human language or emotions. But Alex had spent enough time with aliens to know the difference between can't understand and won't respond. What if everyone had been wrong about Zara? What if that constant smile wasn't a sign that something was broken, but a sign that she was hiding something? Alex had seen refugees before, people who had lost everything and come to a strange new world where nothing made sense. Sometimes hiding was the only way to survive. That night, Alex made a decision that would change everything. Instead of following the same approach as the three researchers before him, he was going to start over completely. He was going to assume that Zara was much smarter than anyone realized, and he was going to figure out why she was keeping that intelligence hidden. After all, sometimes the most important discoveries come from looking at things differently than everyone else, and something told Alex that Zara's smile was telling a very different story than what everyone thought they knew. Alex decided to throw out everything the previous researchers had tried. No more flashcards with pictures of apples and dogs. No more pointing at objects and saying their names over and over. No more treating Zara like she was a child who couldn't understand basic concepts. If his gut feeling was right, she was far smarter than anyone realized. On his second day working with Zara, Alex brought something completely different, a book of poetry. Not children's poems, but real, deep poetry about love, loss, and hope. He sat across from her and started reading aloud. The first poem was about a person missing their hometown, feeling lost in a new place where everything seemed strange and cold. As Alex read, he watched Zara carefully. Her constant smile stayed in place, but something was different. She leaned forward slightly, and her big eyes seemed to focus more intently on his face. When he read the line, "I dream of skies that knew my name," Alex could have sworn he saw her fingers twitch, like she wanted to reach out and touch something that wasn't there. The next day, Alex brought his old guitar. He wasn't a professional musician, just someone who liked to play a few songs when he was feeling stressed. He started with a simple melody, humming along softly. That's when something incredible happened. Zara began to breathe in rhythm with the music, not obviously, but Alex had trained himself to notice small details. Her chest rose and fell perfectly in time with the beat. "You like music, don't you?" Alex asked gently. Zara's smile remained the same, but Alex noticed her head tilt. Again, that tiny movement he had seen on the first day. He was becoming convinced that this head tilt was her way of saying yes, without actually saying anything. Week after week, Alex continued his new approach. He brought books about art, played different kinds of music, and told stories from his own life. He talked about his childhood, about the time he got lost in the woods when he was 8 years old, about how scared and alone he felt until his father found him. He talked about his failed marriage, about how hard it was to connect with people sometimes, about his dreams of discovering something important in his work. Each story seemed to affect Zara in small ways. When Alex talked about happy memories, like the day he graduated from college, Sarah's posture became more relaxed. When he shared painful experiences, like the day his marriage ended, she would lean closer, as if she wanted to offer comfort but didn't know how. The real breakthrough came during Alex's 4th week with Sarah. He had been having a particularly rough day. His boss had questioned his methods, wondering why he wasn't using the standard language learning techniques. Other researchers were starting to whisper that maybe Alex was finally losing his touch. That 15 years of working with aliens had made him soft and unrealistic. Feeling frustrated and discouraged, Alex sat down with Sarah and found himself speaking more honestly than he ever had before. "You know what, Sarah? Maybe everyone is right about me. Maybe I'm just wasting time with cases that can't be helped. My ex-wife always said I cared more about impossible projects than about real life. Maybe she was right. Maybe I should just admit that some things can't be fixed." As soon as the words left his mouth, Alex regretted them. This wasn't professional. He shouldn't be dumping his personal problems on someone who was supposed to be his patient. But then something happened that changed everything. Sarah's constant smile disappeared. Not completely, but it softened, became more real, more human-like. She reached across the table and gently placed her hand on Alex's arm. Her touch was warm and surprisingly comforting. But what shocked Alex the most was what he felt in that moment. Not just physical comfort, but a deep sense of understanding. Like someone was telling him without words that his pain was seen and acknowledged. "Thank you," Alex whispered, genuinely moved by her gesture. Sarah looked directly into his eyes, and Alex saw something that made his heart skip a beat. For just a moment, her expression was completely different. Gone was the blank, constant smile. Instead, her face showed deep sadness, wisdom, and something that looked almost like relief, like she had been waiting months for someone to finally see her as a real person. That evening, Alex stayed late at the research center. He went to the security office and asked to review the footage from Sarah's room during the times when no researchers were present. What he saw on those recordings made him question everything he thought he knew about her. Case during the hours when Sarah was alone, she was a completely different person. The constant smile would fade away, replaced by expressions of deep sadness and longing. She would sit by the window, looking out at the sky with tears streaming down her shimmery cheeks. But more importantly, Alex saw her doing things that suggested a level of intelligence far beyond what anyone had suspected. Sarah would arrange objects in her room in complex patterns that looked almost mathematical. She would trace shapes in the air with her fingers, movements so precise and purposeful that Alex was reminded of the equations he had been writing on the whiteboard during their sessions. Most shocking of all, he saw her examining books that had been left in her room, not just looking at the pictures, but appearing to read the text with careful attention. The next morning, Alex made a decision that could have gotten him in serious trouble. During their session, he deliberately left out a complex textbook about alien biology, open to a page that showed detailed diagrams of brain structures from Sarah's home planet. He pretended to be called away for an urgent phone call, leaving Sarah alone with the book for exactly 10 minutes. When he returned, the book appeared to be exactly as he had left it, but Alex had been careful to note the position of every page, every pen mark, every small detail. As he examined the diagrams more closely, he discovered something that made his hands tremble with excitement. Several small errors in the diagrams had been corrected with tiny, nearly invisible marks. The corrections were so subtle that most people would never notice them, but they were absolutely accurate according to the latest scientific research. Only someone with intimate, advanced knowledge of her species' biology could have made those corrections. Only someone who understood the subject better than most human scientists could have spotted those specific errors. That afternoon, Alex sat across from Sarah, his heart pounding with nervous energy. He had to know the truth, even if it meant taking a huge risk. Looking directly into her eyes, he spoke quietly but clearly. "I know you understand every word I'm saying. I know you're incredibly intelligent. The question is, why are you pretending otherwise?" For what felt like an eternity, Sarah maintained that constant smile. Alex was beginning to think he had made a terrible mistake. that maybe he really was losing his grip on reality. But then, slowly, something extraordinary happened. Zara's smile began to fade. Her eyes filled with tears that sparkled like tiny diamonds as they rolled down her cheeks. When she finally spoke, her voice was like music, melodic, beautiful, and heartbreakingly sad. Because, she whispered, intelligence makes you valuable. And valuable things get used, controlled, and hurt. I've seen what happens to people like me when others discover what we can do. In that moment, Alex realized that everything was about to change. The lonely, hopeless alien girl he had been assigned to help was actually one of the most remarkable individuals he had ever met, and now that her secret was out, both of their lives would never be the same. Alex felt like the world had suddenly shifted under his feet. Here was Zara, speaking perfect English with a voice that sounded like a gentle song, telling him something that changed everything he thought he knew about her situation. For months, everyone had treated her like she couldn't understand basic concepts, when in reality, she had been listening to and understanding every single word. "How long have you been able to speak English?" Alex asked gently, trying to keep his voice calm, even though his mind was racing with questions. Zara wiped the tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Since the day I arrived here, I learned your language during my journey to Earth. We had many months on the transport ship, and I studied everything I could find about human communication." Alex leaned back in his chair, trying to process what this meant. "So when Dr. Johnson tried to teach you basic words, when Dr. Peterson showed you those picture cards, I understood everything," Zara said quietly. "But I also understood that being smart would make me a target. I've seen what happens to people like me when governments discover what we can do." Over the next hour, Zara's story came pouring out like water from a broken dam. She wasn't just any refugee who had escaped from her home planet, back on Kepler 45 to be. She had been one of the youngest strategic analysts ever chosen for the resistance movement. Her people had a special gift, the ability to see patterns and information that others missed, to process complex data in ways that seemed almost magical to other species. "My memory works differently than yours," Zara explained, touching her temple with one finger. "I can remember everything I've ever seen, heard, or read, every conversation, every document, every battle plan. When the war started, the resistance leaders realized that having someone with my abilities could help save lives." Alex found himself leaning forward, completely absorbed in her story. "What kind of work did you do for them?" Zara's expression grew sad. "I analyzed enemy movements, predicted their strategies, found weaknesses in their plans. I was good at it, too good. When our planet was finally invaded, I became one of their primary targets, not to kill me, but to capture me. They wanted to use my abilities for their own purposes." The picture was becoming clearer now. Zara hadn't just fled her planet because of general war and destruction. She had been specifically hunted because of her incredible mental gifts. "So you came to Earth hoping to hide?" "I thought I could disappear here," Zara nodded. "Blended with the other refugees, learned to live a quiet life. But when I arrived and saw how the integration process worked, I realized that any sign of advanced intelligence would immediately flag me as someone worth studying, worth using." Alex felt a chill run down his spine as he understood what she meant. Earth's governments were always interested in acquiring alien technology and knowledge. If they discovered that Zara possessed strategic analysis abilities that far exceeded anything humans could do, she would never be left alone to live her own life. "So you decided to pretend you couldn't learn," Alex said. "It seemed like the safest option." Zara replied, "If I appeared to be cognitively limited, no one would see me as valuable. I could process my grief and trauma in peace without becoming someone else's tool." But Alex could see the cost of this decision written all over Zara's face. "It's been lonely, hasn't it? Pretending to be someone you're not for months." Fresh tears appeared in Zara's eyes. "Incredibly lonely. Do you know what it's like to sit in a room while people talk about you like you're not there? To hear them say you're hopeless, broken, worthless, even when you know it's not true. After months of hearing it, you start to wonder if maybe they're right." Alex felt his heart breaking for her. Is that why you finally decided to trust me? Zara smiled, her first genuine smile since he'd known her. You were different from the others. Dr. Johnson treated me like a malfunctioning machine he was trying to fix. Dr. Peterson spoke to me like I was a small child. Dr. Williams barely looked at me at all. But you talked to me like I was a real person. You shared your own pain with me. When you said you felt like a failure, I couldn't just sit there and let you think that. Alex realized that by being vulnerable and honest with Zara, he had accidentally created the safe space she needed to finally drop her protective mask. What happens now? He asked. I have to write reports about our sessions. My supervisors expect updates on your progress. The fear immediately returned to Zara's eyes. Please, she said, reaching across the table to grab his hand. Please don't tell them what I can really do. I know this puts you in a difficult position, but I'm not ready for them to know. I need more time to figure out how to live here without becoming someone's strategic asset. Alex found himself facing the biggest ethical dilemma of his career. As a researcher, he was supposed to report all significant findings to his supervisors. This discovery, that one of the failed integration cases was actually a brilliant refugee with extraordinary abilities, was exactly the kind of breakthrough that could advance his career and bring recognition to his work. But looking at Zara's frightened face, Alex knew he couldn't betray her trust. She had suffered enough, lost enough, been used enough by people who saw her as a tool rather than a person. Okay, Alex said quietly. I won't report your real abilities, but we need to figure out a plan. We can't keep pretending you're making no progress forever. Relief flooded Zara's features. Thank you, she whispered. I know this is asking a lot. What if we fake slow progress? Alex suggested, his mind already working on possibilities. I could document gradual improvement in your language skills. Maybe show that you're finally starting to respond to social cues. Nothing dramatic enough to attract special attention, but enough to keep you from being labeled as a complete failure. Zara nodded eagerly. I could help you make it look realistic. I know enough about human psychology to understand what kind of progress would seem natural. Over the following weeks, Alex and Zara developed an elaborate but careful plan. During their official sessions, Zara would demonstrate small improvements, recognizing a few English words, responding appropriately to simple questions, showing interest in basic activities. Alex would document these developments as signs of breakthrough after months of patient work. But during their unofficial time together, Zara began sharing fragments of her incredible knowledge with Alex. She helped him understand aspects of alien psychology that he had been studying for years. Her insights were so valuable that Alex was able to make several important discoveries in his field, though he was careful never to reveal the source of his newfound understanding. Their relationship was becoming something neither of them had expected, a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and shared secrets. Alex was learning that Zara wasn't just intelligent, she was kind, funny, and deeply caring about others. Zara was discovering that not all humans would try to exploit her gifts, that some people could be trusted with the truth, but they're careful. Balance was about to be threatened. Dr. Helen Carter, one of Alex's colleagues, had been watching his work with growing suspicion. She had always resented Alex's reputation in the field, and she was becoming very curious about why his hopeless case was suddenly showing signs of improvement. Unknown to Alex and Zara, Dr. Carter had started conducting her own secret observations, trying to figure out what Alex was doing differently, and she was beginning to notice things that didn't quite add up. Dr. Helen Carter had always been the type of person who noticed everything. She prided herself on being thorough, detail-oriented, and most importantly, she never let anything slip past her attention. That's why Alex's sudden success with Zara bothered her so much. In 15 years of working at the research center, Helen had never seen a case turn around so dramatically at first. She told herself it was just professional curiosity. After all, 3 highly qualified researchers had declared Zara hopeless before Alex took over. If Alex had discovered some new technique that actually worked, shouldn't the entire team know about it? Shouldn't they be studying his methods so they could help other difficult cases? But if Helen was being completely honest with herself, there was more to it than professional interest. She had been working at the center for just as long as Alex, but somehow he always seemed to get the recognition, the interesting cases, the respect of their supervisors. When Alex had been assigned to Zara, Helen had secretly felt satisfied. Finally, she thought, Alex would fail at something and everyone would see that he wasn't as special as they believed now. Watching Alex's reports show steady progress with Zara, Helen felt that familiar sting of jealousy mixed with genuine confusion. How was he doing it? What was his secret? Helen started small. She began timing her coffee breaks to coincide with Alex's sessions with Zara. The observation rooms had one-way windows, and Helen found excuses to walk past and glance inside. What she saw didn't match what she expected from traditional language therapy. Instead of flashcards and repetition exercises, Alex seemed to spend most of his time just talking with Zara. Sometimes he brought books and read to her. Other times he played music on an old guitar. Helen even saw him showing Zara pictures on his phone. Not educational materials, but personal photos of his cat, his apartment, places he had traveled. That's not how you teach language to someone with cognitive limitations, Helen muttered to herself as she watched Alex laugh at something Zara had apparently said. But according to his reports, Zara barely spoke at all. So what was Alex laughing at? Helen decided to dig deeper. She started reviewing the security footage from Zara's room during off hours, looking for clues about her actual condition. What she found made her even more suspicious. During the times when no researchers were present, Zara moved around her room with purpose and intelligence. She organized objects in complex patterns, arranged her books in what looked like a systematic order, and most tellingly, she seemed to spend a lot of time staring thoughtfully out the window, not the blank, unfocused staring of someone with cognitive problems, but the contemplative gaze of someone deep in thought. Meanwhile, Alex and Zara had no idea they were being watched so carefully. Their unofficial partnership was growing stronger every day. During their official sessions, Zara continued her carefully planned performance of gradual improvement. She would stumble over English words just enough to seem realistic, ask simple questions that showed progress without revealing too much intelligence, and react to Alex's teaching with the enthusiasm of someone finally beginning to understand. But their real work happened in the quiet moments between official observations. Zara had begun helping Alex with his other research projects, offering insights that were transforming his understanding of alien psychology and communication. Her analytical abilities were beyond anything Alex had ever encountered, but she shared her knowledge carefully, always making sure that Alex's discoveries would seem like his own brilliant deductions rather than information provided by an outside source. You don't have to do this, Alex told her one afternoon as she helped him solve a particularly difficult problem with another alien refugee's case. You're already taking enough risks by trusting me with your secret. Zara smiled that genuine smile that Alex had grown to love seeing. I want to help. For the first time since I arrived on Earth, I feel like I'm using my abilities for something good. Back home, my intelligence was used for war, for fighting, for survival. Here, with you, I can use it to help people heal and find their place in a new world. Their partnership had indeed begun helping other refugees in ways that surprised everyone. Alex's sudden insights into alien behavior and psychology were leading to breakthrough moments, with cases that had been stuck for months. His success rate was becoming the talk of the research center, and Alex was careful to share credit with his team, while protecting the real source of his newfound expertise. But their secret collaboration was about to face its biggest test. Helen Carter had finally gathered enough evidence to convince herself that something unusual was happening. With Alex's case, she had documented inconsistencies in his reports, noted the unusual methods he was using, and most importantly, she had caught several moments on security footage where Zara's behavior seemed far more sophisticated than someone with cognitive limitations should display. Helen made her decision on a rainy Thursday morning. She walked into Director Thompson's office with a thick folder of evidence. and a serious expression on her face. "I need to report something concerning about Dr. Rivers' work with the Zara case," Helen said, placing the folder on the director's desk. "I believe he may be falsifying his progress reports." Director Thompson, a kind but thorough man who had run the research center for over a decade, looked up from his computer with surprise. "That's a very serious accusation, Helen. What evidence do you have?" Helen opened the folder and began laying out her case. Screenshots from security footage showing Zara's intelligent behavior. When alone, timing records that showed Alex's sessions rarely followed standard protocols. Documentation of other researchers' concerns about the dramatic turnaround. In such a supposedly hopeless case, "I'm not saying Alex is doing this maliciously," Helen said, trying to sound reasonable rather than accusatory, "but I think he may have become emotionally invested in this case and is seeing progress that isn't really there. Or worse, he could be coaching her responses to make his methods appear more successful than they are." Director Thompson studied the evidence with growing concern. Helen's documentation was thorough and professional. The inconsistencies she had identified were real, and they raised legitimate questions about the integrity of Alex's work. "What do you recommend?" the director asked. "A formal review," Helen replied. "Independent evaluation of the case, review of all session recordings, and most importantly, direct testing of Zara's actual capabilities by someone other than Alex. If his methods are legitimate, then we need to understand them so we can apply them to other cases. If they're not," Director Thompson nodded slowly, "I'll order the review. This is exactly the kind of situation our oversight protocols are designed to address." As Helen left the director's office, she felt a mixture of satisfaction and anxiety. She had done what she believed was professionally necessary, but she also knew that this review could potentially destroy Alex's career if her suspicions were correct. What Helen didn't realize was that she had just set in motion a chain of events that would force Alex and Zara to make the most difficult decision of their unlikely partnership. In trying to protect the integrity of the research center, Helen had unknowingly threatened not just Alex's career, but Zara's safety and freedom. The review was scheduled to begin the following Monday. Alex and Zara had exactly 4 days to figure out how to protect their secret or risk losing everything they had built together. Alex stared at the official notice on his desk, his hands trembling slightly as he read the words for the 3rd time. "Formal review of research methods and patient progress. Case file 07. The hearing was scheduled for Monday morning at 9 o'clock sharp. He had exactly 3 days to figure out how to protect Zara without destroying his own career. The weekend felt like the longest of Alex's life. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything except the impossible choice he was facing. On one hand, he could come clean about Zara's true abilities and probably save his job by proving that his methods had actually worked better than anyone imagined. On the other hand, exposing Zara's intelligence would almost certainly lead to her being recruited, studied, or worse, used by people who saw her as a valuable asset rather than a person. Zara seemed surprisingly calm about the whole situation. When Alex told her about the review, she simply nodded and said, "I knew this day would come eventually. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" "I won't betray your trust," Alex said firmly. "I'd rather lose my job than put you in danger." But Zara shook her head. "There has to be another way. You've worked too hard, helped too many people, to throw your career away because of me." They spent hours brainstorming different approaches. Maybe Alex could claim that his unconventional methods had slowly broken through Zara's trauma-induced silence. Maybe they could argue that traditional testing methods didn't work for her species. Maybe they could find a way to make her appear just intelligent enough to justify Alex's reports without revealing her true capabilities. But every plan they came up with had holes. Helen Carter was too thorough, too determined. She would push for comprehensive testing that would either expose Zara's brilliance or force her to maintain such a convincing performance of limitation that Alex would look incompetent. Sunday night, Alex barely slept. He kept thinking about Zara's words from their first honest conversation. "Intelligence makes you valuable." and valuable things get used, controlled, and hurt. He thought about her tears when she described the loneliness of pretending to be someone she wasn't for months. He thought about the genuine friendship they had built and how much her insights had helped other refugees find their place in the world. Monday morning came too quickly. Alex walked into the review room feeling like he was about to face a firing squad. Director Thompson sat at the head of a long table, flanked by Helen Carter and two other senior researchers Alex recognized but didn't know well. Zara sat in a chair near the window, maintaining that carefully neutral expression she had perfected over months of hiding. Dr. Rivers. Director Thompson began. We're here because Dr. Carter has raised some legitimate concerns about inconsistencies in your reports and methods. This isn't an attack on your character, but we need to understand what's really happening with this case. Helen Carter spoke next, laying out her evidence with professional precision. She showed security footage of Zara organizing objects in complex patterns. She pointed out discrepancies between Alex's reported methods and what the cameras had recorded. She questioned how someone with supposed cognitive limitations could show such dramatic improvement in such a short time. I'm not suggesting Dr. Rivers has acted with malicious intent, Helen concluded, but the evidence suggests that either his evaluation methods are flawed or the patient's condition has been misrepresented. All eyes turned to Alex. This was his moment to decide. He could defend himself by revealing Zara's true abilities. He could present evidence of her intelligence and claim victory for developing breakthrough methods. His career would be saved, maybe even enhanced by the discovery. Instead, Alex stood up and walked to the front of the room. You're right, he said quietly. There are things about this case that don't fit the traditional model, but not for the reasons you think. Alex began telling a different story entirely. He didn't reveal Zara's analytical capabilities or her strategic background. Instead, he talked about something else he had observed, something that was completely true but had been overshadowed by her intellectual gifts. Zara isn't cognitively limited, Alex said, but she isn't a strategic genius either. What she is someone with extraordinary emotional intelligence and an incredible capacity for understanding trauma in others. Alex walked over to a whiteboard and began drawing simple diagrams showing the refugee integration process. During my time with Zara, I discovered that she has an intuitive understanding of psychological healing that surpasses anything I've seen in my 15 years of work. She doesn't communicate through traditional language patterns. Because she communicates through emotional connection, he turned to face the review panel. The other refugees in our program have been seeking her out during communal times, not because they can have conversations with her, but because somehow just being around her helps them process their own trauma and grief. Alex was taking an enormous risk, but he was betting on something he had observed that was absolutely genuine. Zara did have an extraordinary gift for helping others heal. It wasn't her primary ability, but it was real, and it was something that couldn't be easily exploited by those looking for strategic advantages. I stopped using traditional language teaching methods, Alex continued, because I realized that Zara's value to our program isn't as a student learning to fit into human society. It's as a natural counselor who can help other refugees in ways that our trained therapists can't match. Director Thompson leaned forward with interest. Can you document this? I can, Alex replied, pulling out a folder he had prepared. I've been tracking the progress of other refugees who have spent time with Zara. Their psychological evaluation shows significant improvement in areas like depression, anxiety, and social adaptation. The correlation is too strong to be coincidence, Alex presented chart after chart showing how refugees who interacted with Zara showed faster emotional healing and better integration outcomes. It was all true. Zara's compassionate nature had indeed been helping others, even while she was hiding her intellectual abilities. What I'm proposing, Alex said, is that we stop trying to teach Zara to be like us and instead find ways to incorporate her natural gifts into our refugee support program, not as a test subject, but as a peer counselor who can help others in ways we never could. The room fell silent as the review panel considered this completely unexpected turn. Helen Carter looked confused and slightly frustrated. This wasn't the outcome she had anticipated. Director Thompson spoke first. This is a very different approach from anything we've tried before. Are you suggesting we create an entirely new type of position? I'm suggesting we recognize that value comes in many forms, Alex replied. Zara may never speak perfect English or follow traditional social patterns, but her ability to provide emotional support to traumatized refugees is extraordinary. Why force her into a mold that doesn't fit, when she could be helping people in ways that play to her actual strengths? Zara looked at Alex with amazement and gratitude, without revealing her secret. He had found a way to reframe her entire situation. Instead of being seen as a failed integration case, she could be valued for abilities that were genuine and helpful, but not threatening to anyone's security concerns. 6 months later, Alex and Zara's new program had become a model for refugee centers across the country. Zara worked as an emotional support specialist, helping newly arrived aliens process their trauma and adjust to life on Earth. Her methods were unconventional, but incredibly effective. Alex had been promoted to head of innovative integration programs, recognition for his breakthrough approach to refugee support. More importantly, he and Zara had developed a partnership that transformed how the entire facility approached alien integration. Zara never had to reveal her analytical abilities, but she no longer had to hide her compassion and emotional intelligence. Her smile was genuine now, not a protective mask, but a true expression of someone who had found purpose and acceptance. The story ended with Alex and Zara working together in a bright, comfortable space filled with refugee families from dozens of different worlds. Children of various species played together while their parents attended support groups led by Zara. Alex documented new approaches to trauma recovery that were being adopted by integration programs everywhere. It wasn't the career path either of them had expected, but it was something better, a life built on using their real abilities to help others find hope in a new world. And Zara's smile, once a desperate shield against a harsh reality, had become exactly what Alex had always suspected it could be, a beacon of genuine joy and healing for everyone around her.